We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast, Tommy Avallone.
Thank you for having me.
Documentary filmmaker. Also, and Tommy has made. We're gonna get into this. The Bill Murray. It's a longish title for a doc. The Bill Murray stories: life lessons learned from a mythical man.
I love long titles.
It works. But it really. I mean, first of all, this is such an interesting topic because it's a story that continues to pop up in the media.
So there was one that just popped up the other day.
Okay, so it's Bill Murray as almost like, I mean, I don't know whether to call it performance art or just being himself, will show up randomly in places. He was at South by Southwest. He's in North Carolina. He's all over. South Carolina, just doing random normal things. He showed up at someone's house party and started doing the dishes, making lasagna. Suddenly he's in the band. He's contributing money for a beer run. And at first, some people don't even realize that it's Bill Murray. Then they realize it is Bill Murray. Now, what led you to want to do this doc, aside from being a Bill Murray fan? Obviously, everyone in this room and everyone listening to this podcast is a fan of Bill Murray. But what made you decide, I'm going to make a documentary about Bill Murray sightings?
I would say the cynical answer would be because you want to meet Bill Murray.
No. My friend Brian told me this story. It wasn't true, but it was like, he put his hands over someone's eyes at a urinal, and he turns around and says, "No one will ever believe you." Like, I just love that story.
So that's not a true story.
It's not true because it never happened in a urinal. I mean, there's versions of that story. Like, the best thing about knowing about Bill Murray stories is listening to so many people tell them wrong. It's because it's like much like any urban legend, any whispered down the line. It's just there's one little thing that's just off and whatever. But that's the way we tell stories. Mm-hmm. But he's done the "no one will ever believe you." He's put his hands behind people's eyes, but I don't think it ever happened in a urinal. If so, we never met that person. Mm-hmm. It happened to my friend's uncle's friend or something. It's always that sort of thing. But and then I heard about doing the dishes at a college party in St. Andrews. I was like, why is he in Scotland? Why is he doing the dishes? Why is this? So it was one of those things where it was always in the back of my mind, and I thought, if our take or the way we approached it was making a Bigfoot documentary, not on Bill, but on the stories, then this would be an interesting thing. Like detective novels meets a Bigfoot documentary, and that was like, I always thought we had an interesting way to approach it.
But in the back of your mind, because you yourself are in the doc. I mean, you're not in it a lot, but
I did it on
you
purpose.
Provide a little bit of framework,
Yeah.
right? A bookending to you're trying to track him down, and you got his phone number.
Yeah.
What's now? This phone number just leads to a voicemail, right?
Right.
What's the phone number?
So we don't like the.
No, I'm serious. Before this podcast ends, we're gonna get the phone number because
I'll tell you this. We weren't tracking him down to sit him down for like a 2020 style interview. If we were properly doing this as a Bigfoot documentary, what's the magic in sitting down Bigfoot and be like, so what's with the woods? You wanted to kind of keep that magic going. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to kind of talk to him to see if maybe there was something he would do in the movie or something like that. And where our path ended up going, I think was the perfect way to make the movie. But that phone number is interesting because no one will give it to you. No actor wants to do it because they want to work with Bill again. No director wants to do it because they want to work with Bill again. So we just got very lucky. And I apologize. I can't tell you where I got it from because they swore me to secrecy. But it was not a writer. It was not an actor. It was no one in Hollywood. It was just someone who was a friend with his.
And when you call the number,
it's just an automated. It's here's the number. 1 to leave a message, 2 to leave a page. It was 3 to get a call back.
Page?
It was this automated service.
It's like if you.
Oh, it's an automated service.
Yeah, it's like if you don't set up your voicemail, this is the standard message you get.
It wasn't like, hey, it's Bill, leave a message. It
wasn't like that. It was so it was basically a message service that he could call into.
Like SkyTel or something
Oh, so you don't hear Bill's voice on this when you call. All right, well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
But but this is, it's so funny because one of the stories, I mean, there's a lot of stories and we'll talk about them, but one of the interviews that you got, or the footage, is Sofia Coppola talking about just trying to get to Bill Murray to talk to him to be in her film.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those things. We didn't speak to her directly. That was his fair use.
Right.
But her story is great. Like, they talked to like Fred Roos, who was like a big producer who knew him, and then she knew Mitch Glazer, who was a big friend, and like they're like, yeah, he said he'll do it, but like, there was no to my knowledge, there was no contract, it was just a verbal like, yeah, this sounds fun, I'll do it, and like he just showed up the day he had to in Japan and just started filming. Like there was like they were there filming without him, just hoping that he was to his word.
Oh my God! It's just...
But I mean, like Ted Melfi, like he for St. Vincent, like he was calling us for quite some time, and Bill, like it was like, I think it was the way I remember is the lawyer. Someone reached out to them and like send a script to this area. It was like just like a drop area,
like an area.
Like it was like either a FedEx or a phone booth. I forget the actual story. You had to look it up. But it was one of those situations where so he did that, and then Bill actually called Ted Melfi and tried to meet up with him. But Ted was a commercial director at the time and was like, I can't do that tomorrow. Can you do it the next day? He's like, no. He's like, we'll figure it out, and just hung up, Well,
oh wow.
And then it was like, meet me at LAX in like 3 hours. He's like, all right, fine. It was like a span of a week or a month or whatever, but where he thought his chances were ruined.
Yeah. Bill told that story on Howard Stern.
Oh, okay.
And he picked him up at the airport, and then in this limo they went to In-N-Out and got a
grilled
couple
cheese.
burgers. Yeah. And then headed off to Temecula. And so he basically dumped Melfi off in Temecula to fend for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I heard it was like he just gave the limo driver like a wad of money and was like, just drive him home,
Wow. Well, I think St. Vincent it's so weird because I've been a Bill Murray fan since I was a kid, obviously watching him on SNL, seeing his comedy career. I would say that Stripes might be one of my all-time favorite.
Okay.
Bill Murray,
I'm a Ghostbusters guy.
Ghostbusters. I mean, first of all,
Meatballs.
can't argue. Exactly, can't argue with any of those answers. Meatballs, Ghostbusters. Those are great Bill Murray comedies. But Bill Murray with Razor's Edge, he really wanted to have a serious career, but I think he was too close to his comedy career to make that jump. I think other actors figured we talked to Brett Gelman about this on another episode of the Film Threat podcast. When comedic actors want to do comedy, they're clean shaven, and they want to be serious, they grow a beard, right?
Yeah.
But I know Bill Murray hasn't really played by those rules, but I think St. Vincent is the best serious role that he's done in terms of there are a lot of things in that movie that are funny, but you don't consider St. Vincent a comedy.
Right.
So I would just say that's my personal favorite of the Bill Murray serious films. And Razor's Edge, I have not seen that film since it first came out. Does it hold up? Because you have used footage in the movie.
Yeah, I never had seen it until making the movie. And I thought it was really, really good. And I think, there could be something said about, him just coming off Ghostbusters, this huge thing. Mm-hmm. I just think a lot of it was the audience wasn't ready for it too. Mm-hmm. Like, like if that movie were to come out now, like I think it would have done a lot better, just because like people are now familiar with Bill doing that stuff, and like at that time too, it's like TV actors only did TV, movie actors only did movies. Like
right.
I don't think people looked at other people as like dimensional, but like that movie I thought was very good. I mean the especially looking at it the way I was trying to look at it with like this kind of like there's like a message here. It is even after that movie didn't do well, he went to France. He quit, and went to France for 6 months and just started learning philosophy. He went to school. He studied some G.I. Gurdjieff, which is like this weird kind of philosopher who would break people out of say he was he'd wake people up being asleep at the wheel. And a lot of what he does is kind of like what Bill does. I think there's a Hal Ramis quote somewhere where it's like Gurdjieff and Bill are almost one of the same, because they would do these things to kind of wake people up.
Yeah, it's bizarre because the way Bill acted in these things he'd show up somewhere just being himself, sitting at a bar, hanging out, and his whole thing is just to be in the moment. Most celebrities, are sort of burdened with the can I take a selfie? Can I take a selfie? Can I take a selfie? And he would honor those requests. and do pictures, but kind of goof on it.
Yeah.
You know, in a way, and really just focus more on just being in the moment. I mean, the movie really has like such a great heartfelt message about how to live your life.
Thank you.
Like, can you talk about that a bit? Because you come to this conclusion over the course of interviewing so many people who have had encounters with Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you most people read these stories, and it's like, oh, Bill's doing this or Bill doing that. And it's like a single item. There's like months in between, maybe years in between when you read another Bill Murray story. But when you like sit down and do some research and like actually start reading each one after another, like some of these certain words will pop up. Being in the moment, present, available. During his Bill Murray Day at the Toronto Film Festival with St. Vincent, he talked about the taxi cab story, where it's like he was in this cab. The guy was a saxophone player, and he's like, when do you practice? He's like, I never really practice. I'm always driving. He's like, well, I know how to get in a car. He's like, why don't you get in yours, play the sax in the back, and I'll drive where I need to go. and that was, and he told this story, and like in the end, he goes, and anyone would do that if you are, as they say, available. You know, and that was like, oh, and then you start seeing these words, and they kind of like highlight. It's like that montage in any detective novel. It's like all the words that kind of come off of the screen, and you're seeing all these things through that kind of lens. And that's kind of what happened. You know, you're like, oh, like some of them are just silly stories, but also them are these little interesting tidbits to possibly live a better life. I mean, it's a practice too. He's not always doing this stuff, and you can't. But you know, if you see a moment, you try to like, all right, let's do this.
Well, like
I was gonna say you bring this up in your documentary, but it's that axiom of improv, the yes and.
Yes.
And it just seems like that he finds an opportunity. He hears the guy is a saxophone player, and he ands upon that, and then he's just going, and he's just continually yes-anding to see where the day takes him. He does that at the parties. He does that, you know, with the washing the dishes.
Yeah.
He just takes what he has and adds to it.
Yeah, and it's listening too, you know, like some people are like, when you ask like, oh, what do you do? You're like, yeah, in your phone or doing all other stuff. Whereas like he's like actively participating, or at least is attempting to. Yeah.
Yeah, like when he found out the guy he would spend the night with needed to run off and walk his dog. And then he was just there waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, our Shangri-La story, you know, and it's interesting too, because like you'll see like for that story in particular, you would see these videos of Bill Murray jump behind a bar at Shangri-La in Austin, Texas. It's like that's the punchline, you know. But like, we're able to interview some of these people to find out the setup to all that stuff, you know. And the people really own their stories. Like it's their story, and Bill Murray happens to be a part of it.
What were some of the stories that didn't make the documentary? Because there are so many. I mean, you focus on some of the key ones that I think are like incredibly dramatic, like the house party where the cops showed up and they're trying to be real polite to the cops, and the cops actually, and there's so much footage of this. I mean, there's footage of
that
Bill
stuff's
Murray
never
playing
been
the
seen
tambourine
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that particular thing for the South by Southwest house party, like there's a video of the band playing and all that sort of stuff. But then they gave me all this other footage where like he's in the kitchen like eating lasagna with all the guys, and just it's just like crazy stuff.
But what are some of the stories that didn't make the doc in your research? Because clearly this is what's fun about the doc is you kind of research it like a real serious thing.
I mean, best comedies are played straight, right? Yeah.
Right, like it's like In Search Of, the old Leonard Nimoy series, In Search Of. We're gonna track down Bigfoot. Like you're gonna track down Bill Murray. But what were some of the ones that didn't make the cut?
Well, there's this one guy, like we tried to have we had to have a picture or a video. The only one that didn't have a picture that we used in the movie is at the very, very end of the movie. There's this guy who plays a piano and tells a story about playing the piano in Rhode Island, and Bill Murray just kind of shows up, and they had this magical night. But we were able to do that because, like, there's a piano, it's somewhat cinematic and stuff like that. But whereas everyone else is just telling a story, it's very tough if they don't have a picture or a video to make that interesting. But there was this one guy I knew in New York where he was coming out of, like, JFK, and where you get in the cars and all that stuff. Bill Murray's just has a whole bunch of chocolate chip cookies and just handed them out to people. And I thought that was hilarious. But we didn't line up where we interviewed him. But there was this one story that didn't make the cut, and it was because it was fake.
Oh.
But there's this guy in Phoenix who around 2012 loved the idea of these stories happening. It was like really the kind of big time when the stories started popping. and he made this flyer. It was called the Bill Murray Party Crashing Tour, and the rules were Bill Murray was gonna be in like Phoenix here, Philadelphia here, Austin here, all these different spots during these times. And if you had a party and had a sign that says Bill Murray, please crash here, free beer and karaoke, he might show up. And the guy like acted as if he was a manager. Sometimes he had another guy acting as a manager. Sometimes he had this like homeless guy kind of go up and go to some of these parties acting as if they were Bill Murray or Bill Murray's manager. And people would have these parties. And we filmed some of it because we thought it was kind of magical in the sense that these people were having these parties to celebrate someone that they loved and admired. But it kind of came in from a non-good spot. It was just like it was fake.
Wow.
So we chose not to do it, but it's on the DVD, which is out October 30th.
So the DVD has plenty of extras and deleted scenes.
Yeah, we put like extended interviews with Peter Farrelly, extended interviews with Joel Murray, like the story of, we have this like weird mask. We show how we made the mask.
Right. Well, it's interesting because it reminded me, first of all, your doc reminded me how much I love Bill Murray.
Oh, cool.
And secondly, I think it's the best doc about a person where the person isn't interviewed in the movie. Like normally you expect someone to be interviewed, but this, you really learned about this essence where, I mean, first of all, I was taking a bunch of different notes the second time I watched it. And one of the things that kept coming up was by actions and not by words, Bill Murray is teaching us how to live.
Yeah, that's Gavin Edwards. He wrote the Tao of Bill Murray.
Yeah, that it really sort of brought everything together. That Bill Murray is just like he's so present and in the moment. It's just, well, this is happening now. I'm going to grab your French fry off your plate. I'm going to do whatever. But he can. I mean, there's something about him where he can get away with it, obviously, being Bill Murray.
But he did this stuff before he was famous. Like him and his brother, before Saturday Night Live, they were just in New York, snuck onto a Tommy premiere. I think it was like in a subway in 1975 or something like that, where he would do these things, just kind of like make weird noises and just kind of do these weird, I don't want to say experiments, but just have fun. Like, it's not like... When he was younger, he got in trouble with some drugs at one point. And I say this in a weird sense where like he was in an airport and he said, I have a bomb on me, just joking around. And they found him, and then he happened to have like a little bit of marijuana on him or something. But it wasn't like it's not like a drug story. It's a story in that like he just loved to see how people would react. And it's improv, like even at a young age, he liked these sort of things to happen,
So he's the reason that when you go to the airport, it says, "Do not joke about,"
or like yelling "shark in the ocean."
Yeah.
But with Gavin, like it was great to talk to a journalist who was like on the same path as us. Like it was like Gavin, who was a Rolling Stone journalist, but also wrote this book. But then also Dave Allen from CNN, who has this Wisdom Project, where they kind of saw the same things we were. And they were able to say the stuff that I was thinking, or it was great having it come from like a journalist approach. And I don't know how you guys learn everything, but like I did not do well in college. Like I'm a very much of like, if you tell me a story about something, I can kind of get the message from the story. But if you tell me how I'm supposed to think something or supposed to learn something, it doesn't work for me. And so
I think that's true for a lot of people, right?
Yeah,
I mean
But
that's how I made it through English.
Yeah,
it was like. I never read the book, but I could kind of tell where that story was going to go.
Yeah, but with the actions by words, it's like, if Bill does these things, it's almost a better way of learning something than just him sitting down in an interview going, "We should all be present. We should all be available."
Right.
It's like I think it's just a different way to approach things, and not that he's actively trying to teach anyone anything. Like I think he does it. It's almost like a practice for himself. But then you can just also learn from that.
One of the best things that you had this incredible footage. First of all, I don't know how you got all this footage. I mean, it's like you made a documentary about Bigfoot, but you actually got lots of footage of Bigfoot.
It wasn't just that one image.
So I assume that you just got the rights from all the people who were involved and just got them to get on board with the doc.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves telling their stories,
right?
And like, I don't think anyone would want to like hold that back,
right?
So we just came across some really nice people.
Well, there's a couple. Two of my favorites. One was the construction, reading poetry to construction workers. Tell me about how that all came about.
So that's the Poets House. It's a New York institution where they have all this big library full of poetry, and I guess they had like a small place in New York somewhere, and they were building this new spot. And Bill had known the neighbor of the person who's in charge, so he's always friendly to the thing. He loves poetry. He goes to this poetry walk every year, and they were building this new site for it, and. The lady who was in charge wanted to get a little bit of, like, energy. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, let's understand, like, the importance of this, even though their jobs weren't going to change, but they just wanted to know how important it was to them. So they asked Bill Murray to come by and read them poetry, but the construction workers had no idea that this was coming together. And a lot of these guys aren't poetry people. Like, I myself, like, I love the idea of poetry. I don't know. I couldn't tell you one good poem. But I like the idea that I should, but I don't, and that's like kind of the way they thought it. So the reactions on their face when Bill's reading them these like pieces of art is very interesting. And
then there's another piece that, they're making, this is so weird. They made a promo for this film school,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it wasn't a film school.
Not a film school.
It was just like
what was the school?
I think a difficult learning sort of school.
Yeah.
But it wasn't film school though.
But so they made a film to promote the school.
Yes.
that was like a. First of all, it's weird that Bill Murray just decided to do it.
Well,
and then so they actually got him to do it, and then secondly, the guy who made the project said, "Can we just do this shot where we walk slow motion down a hall? Can you? How did all that come about?" And because the footage from that is hysterical.
Yeah.
It's like it's a gold mine.
What was so interesting about that one is like the way it's told. Like the narrative online is. These kids asked Bill Murray for an autograph, and instead Bill Murray said, "How about we just walk down the hallway in slow motion?" But like when speaking to John, the person who was in he was making this commercial for this school. Bill was a part of it, and at the end they said, we're big Wes Anderson fans. We would love sort of like this sort of Wes Anderson sort of shot. We'll put some music over, like the Kinks or something. Can we just like walk down in slow motion with you? And he's like, yeah, of course. But we have to like turn around in the reveals to like make it like, interesting. And then they shot it. He just said good session to everyone and just walked out, and that was it. So it's like, that was one of those situations where like, even myself, like I was like, oh, that's not how I heard it, but you're talking to the person it happened to, And we were actually like thinking about making a segment in the movie of just these stories told wrong, like just that like, oh, because like oh, you jumped into someone's wedding picture. It's like, no, it's this, it's actually that, but like we just didn't do that. But that wasn't a way we were thinking about doing. Well,
the people that you're effectively interviewing the witnesses, who saw Bigfoot / Bill Murray or saw Bill, I feel like in the moment you can be so present in the moment that maybe all those details you're like, oh, you're not going to get them 100% right.
Right.
You're being effectively, you put yourself in the role of being an investigative journalist.
Sure.
And I don't want to ruin too much about what happens in the film. You relentlessly pursue and call him, but you do end up having your own encounter with Bill.
Yeah,
how much can you tell us about that? Because I feel like there's more to that story.
Yeah, so we start the movie off like 3 minutes in. It's a picture of me and Bill. Some of the promotion is a picture with me and Bill because we wanted to rip that off like a Band-Aid. Like we didn't want the movie to be, will he get Bill Murray? Because we thought that wasn't the point of the movie. Like there's other movies that do that well. Like My Date with Drew, that was like, will he get a date with Drew Barrymore? Right. Like I didn't want a date with Bill. Like I wasn't trying to reach out to like meet Bill or ask him any questions. It was just like, this is a part of the story. Mm-hmm. Like we wanted to talk about these Bill Murray encounters, these Bill Murray stories, and kind of learn from them. So our goal was to rip that off like a Band-Aid. Like, all right, well that's not what this is. This is what this is. This is about these things. And in doing so, you call someone enough times, you want there to be some sort of interaction, or at least like, I don't know, like a encounter of some kind. But like we lucked out by how many times we went to South Carolina that we knew that he was going to be at this River Sharks game, and that's where kind of our our encounter happened. Like the people at the River Sharks game were very, very helpful in getting us like badges and something. We could just bought tickets, but like it was nice, So I feel like that's enough to like keep the people wanting to see the movie.
Yeah. I mean,
he was a ghost the whole time.
But it's interesting because you yourself, like, you're changed by this experience. It's interesting to see you at the beginning. I mean, you're a fan. Like, I mean, I feel like you talk to anybody. There's a very short list of people that everyone likes.
Yeah,
you know,
like him and Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. Probably Ryan Gosling, people like that. Like for the most part, everybody likes these actors, and Bill Murray is on that list. So you start as a fan,
yeah,
and then you begin to learn really about his life.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like I'm always going to be a Bill Murray fan. That never stops. But it's almost like you become more of a fan of the stories, and like kind of what's happening there, and because they're really just like these genuine, great interactions with people. Like I myself, like I mean, we CNN David Allen speaks about it a little bit, but like I know I'm very, very guilty of sometimes going to a place just to post about it on Instagram. Like that's like not might be the best thing to do in life, but like when he's doing these things, it reminds you to like kind of like just when we're here, be here, and don't worry about posting it later or talking about it later. Let's just experience what's happening right now, and then the future will come eventually. I
mean, Bill Murray is not on any social media that I know about.
No, he's not.
Nor does he care. There's no website. Bill Murray doesn't have a Patreon or a...
Yeah, he doesn't have a manager. He doesn't have an agent. I mean, the only thing close enough to something that's sanctioned by Bill Murray is the William Murray Golf Line, and that's the guys from The Chive.
Does he have a lawyer even? Like,
he has a lawyer.
He does have a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that's all he has is a lawyer. Like, if you want Bill Murray to be in a project, you need to...
A lawyer and the 100 number.
Yeah.
I mean, even the lawyer won't negotiate it. He'll negotiate it, but like he won't facilitate it.
Well, I guess that's my question then. Did you have to deal with? I mean, you first of all have this whole your poster for your movie is funny. It's like an old pulp novel, like Bill Murray as like a Bigfoot. Did you have to deal with the lawyer or Bill Murray? To be able to do this?
I'll tell you. Joel Murray, like his brother, we interviewed him, and he was awesome in the movie, and we showed it to him, and he very much enjoyed it. Bill Murray was on the Today Show, and they asked him, "Do you know that there's this documentary about you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I heard about it. They asked me to be in it. A movie about myself. Maybe that's something I'll do when I pass away." And I feel like that's a very Bill Murray like answer. There's no way he would. First of all, when we were reaching out to him, like we didn't want like to sit down with him. Like we still felt like that wasn't the kind of movie we were making. We wanted to like, even when I did this documentary called I Am Santa Claus, the movie starts showing like, okay, well Santa isn't real, but let's talk about the magic that is these people trying to be the best versions of themselves while your kid's in their lap. So it's like deconstructing something, but then to also show the magic that still exists in it. So if we were ever to sit down with him and ask him all these questions, it would ruin that. But yeah, he's aware of it.
Yeah, I also want to one of my favorite scenes from Stripes.
Okay,
is he gives that big speech, right? And it's been repeated. There's like things you actually do a little montage of this, and you talk
Meatballs.
Meatballs.
Okay,
it just doesn't matter.
Yes, you said Stripes, and I was like, wasn't.
Yeah, well, Stripes is like I get those two mixed up, but like Stripes is that speech.
Yeah.
Is just incredible where he rallies after, Sergeant Hulka gets injured.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. That's a great speech. Bill Murray's characters have a habit of dispensing life advice, even his character in Caddyshack, right?
The Dalai Lama.
Yeah. Like he's sort of giving out this very philosophical advice. Obviously, this is something that Bill Murray, not that was, I don't want to take any credit away from the screenwriters because it may have been there, but it seems like when you are doing a movie and you change who the lead actor is. I mean, I know for a fact that Stripes originally was a Cheech and Chong movie.
Oh, right. Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah. Cheech and Chong it was basically Cheech and Chong join the army.
Yeah.
And Cheech
That
and
would've been
Chong.
good.
Well, Cheech and Chong decided not to do it. They did Up in Smoke 2 because they were offered to direct it. Is sort of how that goes. But there is some Judge Reinhold's character is like the stoner character that is the only thing that really survived from that version of the script.
Okay.
But the script was changed obviously when Bill Murray came aboard. That speech it's just all Bill Murray-isms. But that speech in Meatballs where it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And there's even a speech in Groundhog's Day. There's Bill Murray's career. If you sort of disseminate, he'll get like a few scenes in a movie that he's leaking his philosophy in. Tell me about that, especially the "just doesn't matter" speech from Meatballs.
Well, what's interesting is like Meatballs, like I'm 35, so I kind of missed Stripes and Meatballs. Like I've watched them and I've seen them, but the really where I came into my appreciation for Bill Murray was Ghostbusters, like Scrooged. What About Bob? Like that was that's Groundhog Day. That's my Bill Murray. So I didn't know too much about Stripes or Meatballs, but our executive producer Glenn Zipper, he showed me that Meatballs clip, and I was like, so I rewatched the whole movie and all that stuff. But and then watching Razor's Edge at the end, like she's like, will we ever meet? He's like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, and so to repeat some of those lines, it's like, oh, this means something. And even like the Caddyshack, like that line in particular where he's talking about the Dalai Lama, that was definitely improv. And I would say 90% sure the Meatballs line that it doesn't matter is improv as well. Mm-hmm. I think Ivan just kind of let him go and like, all right, do you, so I think, especially like we talked to Peter Farrelly and like that there's that rumor where like he would like took the script and just threw it away. And was like, I got it, and that's halfway true. Like he would look at the sides, get the idea, give them what they wanted once, but then he would just do his own stuff. There's no knowledge dropping in Kingpin. It's a fantastic movie, but like it wasn't one of those like sort of Caddyshack experiences. But like I think definitely when he sees the character can truthfully bring some of this knowledge or some of this opinion that he shares, he'll do it.
It makes you wonder if filmmakers write for Bill Murray, or they just want him to do his thing, and they'll create a character for him.
Right. Well, so Mitch Glazer, who wrote Scrooged and Rock the Casbah for Bill, and they're longtime friends, he said like he would hear like people would give Bill Murray a script and be like, oh, I wrote this just for you, and like he would not read any of it because he just felt like it was all lines he already said in all his other movies, So like when someone writes for Bill, he'll never read it. That's what I've been told, like through like these like interviews and all that sort of stuff. But it's interesting. I mean, you would think there's a template to what Bill is, but maybe that's not on the script. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I'm curious what the St. Vincent script would have or looked like.
Well, that was written for Jack Nicholson. I think Jack Nicholson was supposed to play that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I'll watch that movie every once in a while. It pops up and I watch it. It's really sweet. His relationship with the kid in it is just because Bill Murray's character, he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He really is. Like it's I think it's definitely the least like him, but philosophically it still has that philosophy.
Sorry,
in there. Oh, no worries. But philosophically, the philosophy is still woven throughout.
Yeah.
He there's a shift and a change in that character. Not to give too much away, but St. Vincent's also one of those films that I know it was nominated in several categories, but
I don't think he was though.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Because there was this whole thing like I'm not saying anything that's new or anything, but
Right.
but when he was winning all these awards for Lost in Translation, and like when he didn't win the Oscar, like I think that like he was super bummed,
Yeah.
and then kind of like re-looked at the whole award system as like I'm not falling for that.
It just doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it just doesn't matter. That would have been a great speech to give when he gets his Oscar.
Well, if you look up the Golden Globes win for him for Lost in Translation, he talks about he's like, well, a lot of people are going to take credit for this. Yeah. And he just had fired his agent. So he's like talking about that. It was funny stuff.
Oh, wow.
But in St. Vincent, they had to hire someone just to watch Bill. Like he would.
What do you mean watch Bill?
Make sure like Bill
Keep
didn't
tabs
wander
on it.
off too far. Because they were shooting in Brooklyn, he would like have these spots where he would find like different good places to eat, different he would just take his bike and just start riding around and they're like, "Where's Bill?" It's like it was someone's job to find where he was.
Well, I guess you got to when you're making a movie with him, you're not going to get 7 takes. You're going to get the takes you get, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
what's the process like? We're trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like
in your research.
Yeah, having read a couple things, even talking to Peter, it was like, he's there, he's super professional, and he's going to do what he thinks is best. He'll give you what you think is best, and sometimes there's something in the middle. Sometimes he's wrong, sometimes he's right. I think he's open to the, I think Joel said he's not afraid to fail. So like he'll try something, and I think Peter said it's like 9 times out of 10 it's amazing. But
that 10th time.
yeah. You don't know. And like there was that scene in Kingpin. It's one of my favorite lines where it's like he talks to the one lady. He's like, "Hey," and she goes, "Hey." He's like, "Not you, you." Like that was all. They just learned not to yell cut. Like they would just stop when Bill was done. Yeah, but that's all improv. There's
also a funny story about Bill Murray. His first appearance at San Diego Comic-Con, you interviewed Josh Horowitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to recount a little bit of that because that's just bizarre.
Yeah, so Josh was this awesome guy who had this amazing opportunity to interview Bill Murray at Comic-Con, which is like you never think that would ever happen. And they just weren't sure until the very, very last minute if he was going to show up. Like Mitch Glazer, who wrote the movie Rock the Casbah that they were promoting, was like, no, he'll be there. He'll be there. And even when he finally got there, he was like, "Do you guys want to just go to Mexico?" And like, and Josh was like, "I think we should do the interview." But like, he feels that if he would have said sure, like they would just left. There was interviews for St. Vincent where everyone just left because Bill Murray took them all, like the actors, to go get French toast somewhere. So I mean, he marches to his own beat. I think that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
To his drum.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just the learning you sort of learn his philosophy by his life, not by his words, but just his actions and what he did. This is a way of living, where you can be present in the moment. You're not worried about what you're going to post on Instagram.
Right.
I think Bill Murray would be the last person on the planet to take a picture of his lunch and put it on Instagram. You know what I mean? He just doesn't. I feel like you're ruining the meal. By you just you got the journey is the important thing. I think that's his message.
Yeah, it's also like not knowing what something will take you. Like I think sometimes he'll be somewhere with someone and someone will ask him to do something and he's like, that yes and that builds to a beautiful night. Like he's never going to tell a story about being in a taxi cab who someone just drove him from point A to point B. But then he's at Toronto Film Festival talking about the time where that guy got in the backseat and played the saxophone. They went to get barbecue chicken afterwards. Like it was this beautiful night. And I think he understands that yes and or that listening to someone, because I think he's honest to God, like interested in other people. Like like Joel said it I think it's on camera or special features, but he's like, he's not there to talk about what about Bob. But if you're right. Like, but he's actually like interested in like, well, what do you do and all that sort of stuff? Because like I think by living like this, it helps his acting as well. Like I'm not saying he's doing it in a like a non like good way where he's like just trying to get stuff for himself. But I think it enriches his performances where he just knows how to be a real person because he's constantly interacting with real people.
Now you're just for the people who listen to our podcast who are filmmakers that are interested in inside baseball type things. This is now your second doc.
Yes, second
feature,
directed, yeah.
Second directed
I
doc.
I produced another one, but yes.
And I'm sure you're working on something new.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
You're becoming somewhat prolific as in this process. What have you learned? And it's also, first of all, I know how
Can you
hard.
call my mom and tell me that?
Yeah. I know how hard it is to just get a movie made, number one, but also to get a film released.
Yeah.
Is
harder.
rough.
Yeah.
So the film comes out, Bill Murray Stories, October 30th.
Yeah, it's October 26th on iTunes.
On
and
iTunes.
then October 30th on DVD and Blu-ray.
Yeah, so just look on your favorite streaming platform to purchase films from.
Yeah.
But how do not to go into too much detail, but
Sure.
how do the economics of that work, and are you able to make a living at it? Because with all the doc filmmakers that we interview, it really is like community service, grants, just tough to get it out there. How are you able to survive and be able to put out and continue to put out the work?
I think it's this understanding that having a very good relationship with the idea of fear. You know, like, because it's not like a job where you're like, well, I'm good for as long as I can work or as long as someone doesn't fire me. You're like, all right, well, I can live for 6 months now. And if you're okay with that, then you could make it full time.
Right.
And that's what I do, you know. And also, I like to think that I don't have a big overhead. You know, I mean, I'm married, I have a son, you know, but like we're not crazy spenders, you know. But I mean, the idea is, so I Am Santa Claus was my first documentary. I had produced some scripted stuff and I had directed a scripted thing, but like just kind of with my friends, and like our biggest celebrity was with Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts. Mm-hmm. And no offense to Michael Ray Bauer, he's a good dude, but like, you know, he understands, mm-hmm. you know, that was the thing. And because I wanted to be Kevin Smith, mm-hmm. you know, like that was my goal. Like 22 years old, make your movie. You know, that's why I'll back up for a second. That's why I'm extremely honored and happy that you love the movie, because I read all your festival books.
Oh, thanks.
You know, and like that was like a thing where I was like, okay, well, you have to like get a package, you have to make it look fancy, you know, all that sort of stuff. Like I knew all these things, you know, because that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Sundance because Kevin Smith went to Sundance, and so when the scripted stuff wasn't working out the way I wanted to, because like I don't feel like that's my best skill set currently. Mm-hmm. You know, like I fumbled into the idea of documentaries, and then when I made my first movie. I was like, oh, I want to keep doing this, you know, and I had this idea to do the Bill Murray story. So I was like, all right, well, exactly what I said earlier. There's Bigfoot, blah, blah, blah. So we started just filming it. Like, I lived in New Jersey at the time, so to go to New York with a couple friends to film this wasn't difficult. You know, we filmed the karaoke story, the kickball story, interviewed these people, this writer from the Big Bad Book of Bill Murray. But in promoting Santa, I saw that there was these New York City Ghostbusters. And I was like, oh, that would be interesting. I should interview them. And then I was like, oh, well, there's more. There's New Jersey Ghostbusters. They're even closer to me. So we started interviewing them. But doing that research, I saw that there's this guy, Brendan Mertens, in Canada, making this documentary about Ghostbuster fans called Ghost Heads. And it was my idea in that I was like, well, I'll reach out to him. I'll say, hey, look, I'll ask them questions for your movie, and I'll give you the footage. You'll get to Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd before I will. You ask my questions, and we'll swap footage, right?
Oh, what a great... this is really great advice. Doc filmmakers helping each other out.
Yeah, I mean, it's legal. I mean, we chose not to do it that way because we felt like, you know, like, it wasn't like... We just didn't want to like take like we knew that it might mess up relationships with them and Bill. We just didn't.
Okay.
Because they're expecting a certain interview and then to have some
legally we could have did it, but we just chose not to. Yeah. You know, but that was the idea, right? So, but then I met this one Ghostbuster fan named Tom Gebhardt, and I just knew his story. It reminded me of like one of our Santa Clauses. Mm-hmm. This one guy from Detroit, and I was like, oh, I know how to tell the story. I was like, dude, I'll help you produce. I'll edit the movie. I think we could do this, you know, and that was so we did a Kickstarter and then eventually. Oh, I'm sorry, we did Indiegogo first and then a Kickstarter, you know, because we thought, you know, these are easier things to kickstart when there's already a kind of built-in fan base. Right. You know, like if I would just wrote a movie about, you know, whatever, it'd be harder, you know, to do something like that. And then there was these guys from Connecticut Ghostbusters had Old Line Productions. This guy Raymond, who I became friends with. And he's like, I love to invest, but I love to do it outside of the Kickstarter. So they properly invested, became executive producers, all that stuff. Not too much money, but when we sold the movie and it played at Tribeca and all that stuff, they made their money back fast. So they were like, well, what's next? We'd love to like fully fund the next one, you know? And so I already had this sizzle, this trailer of the stuff I already shot. At Kickball, Karaoke, The Big Bad Book of Bill Murray, and so it was like this like concept. I was like, oh, because none of my ideas are good on paper. Like everyone's like, how are you gonna make a movie about Bill Murray stories? It was gonna get old after a while, you know. But we showed them the sizzle, and they're like, let's do it. So we started in like 2015 filming, took a break to make this other movie called Ghost Heads, and then came back at the tail end of 2016 to 2017, filmed Bill Murray. And then, you know, came out South by Southwest 2018. So it was like a strong like year and a half of doing this stuff. But if we had not listened and paid attention to where like when I first started making documentaries, I reached out to a bunch of guys that I was fans of, and they said, you know, if you make the movie you plan on making, you didn't listen to your talent, you know. And I think that's a really strong advice in some sense. Like if for our Santa Claus movie, if we listened to our talent, we would have made a documentary about someone from the North Pole. Like that wasn't going to happen, you know? But like for this, I felt it really was a strong advice because it's like we just saw that there was this other story here, and this like little like as much as I wanted to direct the Bill Murray stories next, I just saw that wasn't in the cards, and I was to produce this Ghostheads movie, and that kind of we would not have been able to make Bill Murray the way we did without Ghostheads.
I always like Dan Mervish from Slamdance. His advice to filmmakers is to marry a doctor because his wife is a doctor and she is the primary breadwinner, and he makes money sometimes and puts out a movie every couple years. That's Dan Mervish's simple advice. I've seen him in front of an audience. What's your advice to filmmakers? Marry a doctor. There is really good, and I really hope that everyone. I mean, my whole intention with doing that film festival book was to tell the truth and to get information that is practical that people can use. And
I'm sorry,
and I feel like I want to, whenever I have the opportunity, someone here who's done it.
Yeah.
Because there are people that want to be in your shoes right now. Oh. I don't mean on this podcast, although maybe they want to be on the podcast.
Get free water.
Contact us when you have a film that is coming out in release, and we'll chat with you. I'm pretty easy to reach.
Yeah.
I have a filmthreatgore@gmail.com. That's my film threat.
I was surprised you responded. Like
I responded right away.
I know.
You dropped a name of a friend of mine that I know, but I don't. Yeah. Here's the thing: is I'm an email zero guy. I have 4 different email addresses for different things, and not for catfishing, but for just everything business related of separate. And I respond to every email. I would just feel bad. Now I do have a draft of standard canned responses to certain things because I get asked the same 5 things usually, but I always will personalize it or change it or write something else, whatever. But you mentioned Paul Osborne, who's a friend of mine, has been for years. He did that documentary, Official Rejection.
Yeah, that's how I knew of Paul,
10 Till Noon, he wrote the screenplay for that. He's got a new film coming out, which we just exclusively debuted.
I saw that.
The trailer on Film Threat.
Jan from The Office.
Yeah, Jan from The Office. It's now I forget the name.
Which one was it?
Just go to, look up on Film Threat. Look up on Film Threat right now.
Isn't it like Cruel Intentions? No, wait.
It's something like that.
I know it's Cruel's in it.
We're going to find out because we are looking it up as we speak. But you mentioned his name.
But yes, Paul, was fantastic.
Paul Osborne.
Sorry, Cruel Hearts.
Cruel Hearts,
so
Cruel
close.
Hearts, and we debuted the trailer on the Film Threats YouTube channel, which is cool. And then we did a little news write-up on it, which it's mostly just Paul's director statement, which I love him as a writer-director. He has like a point of view, creates rules, and he tells his stories in an incredibly unique way. I'm a Paul Osborne fan. And you know what's so funny? We haven't even had Paul on the podcast yet. He hasn't been on a single... No, he was on... That's not true. He was on an episode, I think it was LA Comic-Con, or when we did one of our live shows, he came out to be on the podcast. But when Cruel Hearts comes out, we're having Paul Osborne on the podcast just to let him know. But you dropped his name, but it doesn't matter. Like, I'll answer any email. No, I'm serious.
But let me ask you this. So from your book, for some reason, this one story sticks out.
Please.
Where you had talked about going to all these festivals and all that sort of stuff, but you had mentioned that the dude was a real person from Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
That's
Jeff Dowd.
Yeah. So is that... So you just... This was a festival guy that those guys, they created that character because he really exists.
Yeah, I mean Jeff Dowd. I mean you can Google him. You can look him up. Jeff Dowd is a real person who the Big Lebowski is based on him because he's sort of this unkempt, he sort of stumbles through life. He's a big stoner, big pothead, but just gets by and actually gets stuff done. Jeff is a producer's rep, who reps indie films.
Oh,
and the Coen brothers met him at the time when they were doing their first film, Blood Simple.
Yeah,
that's how they met Jeff, and just thought he was so weird. He influenced. I mean, Jeff Bridges' character is Jeff Dowd. I just
think that's so interesting when someone's such an iconic character like that Like,
that's
he's a really. It's like Kramer, He needs his own. He needs his own like reality tour bus,
No, for sure. so yeah, you could look that up. But Jeff is also a legit business person in the realm of indie film. Now, there are a lot of bizarre characters in the realm of indie film. I mean, this industry is filled with it's a collection of misfits, right? So I think it's why I kind of fit in the world of indie film. It's misfits trying to do something against impossible odds, where money and time are your enemy and you're just fighting against it to express something.
But but the great thing too, it's like when you were writing those books and like during that time, that's like one of the better times for indie filmmaking, It's changed.
I will say this, if I do a follow-up to the books, which I could do a quote 5th edition, but I would make it very different. I mean, there are a lot of the things that I think, a lot of the basic information in the books is still valid, but there are more tools available to filmmakers online. I mean, I do talk about social media in the most recent edition of the book, but things have changed. It's different now, and I also think the landscape is different. There are more opportunities, and there are more opportunities to fail. Let's say that, like you can self-release your movie, but you can also go broke self-releasing your movie, So, yeah.
But why I don't self-release my movies so I can make another one.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that is the choice.
You just get burnt. Like, I mean, like not burnt. Right. Like you're just physically exhausted, and like it's. Like, like even when people
who's your distributor?
Gravitas.
Okay, yeah, cool, yeah.
But I mean, like I've seen the people who go through those routes, right. And it's just like it's just you're just like, okay, if you're gonna put your movie out, like that's 2 years off your life.
No, seriously, it's the self-releasing path is
like I'm an indie guy, like I love but like that's the one thing that's like I need someone's help. Like I don't know what I'm doing on this, you know, like. And that's hard to do. Even just out here, we just had a screening in Beverly Hills. It's the theater starts with an L.
Lumiere.
That one. They, that was hard to get people to come to. Like we're like selling out, like in Austin and London and all these like different places, and like LA, like I'm like 90% of the people I knew there, and like I'm texting, and like it's so funny about Los Angeles is when you tell someone like, hey, can you come see the movie? They think you're like adding them to some sort of guest list. It's like, no, it's just a theater, like.
Yeah.
But it's a hustle, and it's a lot of hard work, especially like. I mean, thankfully, we didn't have to do it for this one, but like the other 2 movies that we did Kickstarter for, like people don't realize that's a full-time job.
No. Kickstarter is a 24/7 job. I'm about to launch a Kickstarter for a doc that I relaunch actually a Kickstarter for a doc that I want to do, but it is like 24/7.
Yeah.
When I did the Kickstarter to bring Film Threat back, that was, I mean, I remember just being physically drained at the end and just, okay, now I got to mail things.
Oh, the mailing's the worst.
Mail all the patches and the T-shirts and I'll never do T-shirts again, though. It's a pain in the ass to get the
people treat you like
sizes.
Your Amazon. They're like, where's my stuff? It's like, I got to make the movie.
Right. Well, yeah. No, I vowed that I would deliver all the physical rewards before the end of the year. So I think my Kickstarter ended like first week of October, and before the end of the year, we had delivered all the physical rewards. And there's like digital rewards that are kind of different kind of things. But yeah, no, that is it's a full-time thing. It's not fun. And Kickstarter, I don't know that Kickstarter is the pathway for indie filmmakers like it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, legit what it costs to really do a documentary with your legal, I's dotted and T's crossed and everything on the up and up and clearances and lawyers and music and everything else. You do a documentary the right way, it's $300,000.
Yeah.
That's $300,000 is base.
Yes.
That's just base to do it. Now, there are ways to do it much less expensively, so I think, which is basically you wearing 9 different hats.
Yep.
Marketing, and you're shooting your own stuff, and you're in it, and you're editing your own stuff, and whatnot. So if you are wearing many hats, you can bring that down. but then you really, I don't know how you're married and have a kid. Like that's a family's a job and a responsibility unto itself. But the
It's a job I was willing to take on.
incredibly worthwhile. But the indie film is another form of having a baby in a sense, and it's boy. Man, just more power to you to have gotten this out and through gravitas, which is, going to help you and support you.
Yeah, I mean, we lucked out in some sense where it was like, for our Santa Claus movie, we did like a 1 day theatrical for like same day, whatever day it was, like 13 different cities, blah, blah, blah. But this, it's like we lucked out in that some of the theaters would do week runs, and some of them actually like re-upped and did longer. Like we played in Grand Rapids like 2 weeks, and cool. Chicago in 2 weeks. It's like in some weird spots too,
Well, docs are like the new. I remember when docs was sort of a eat your broccoli, or eat your vegetables kind of thing. Now docs are entertaining, and now and for me at a film festival, when you go to a film festival, it's like the docs are the first things I gravitate to.
Okay,
because I think the likelihood that I'll see a good doc is much higher than the likelihood that I'll see a good narrative feature. Yeah. I'm sorry to all the narrative filmmakers out there. I think it's harder to make a better narrative film than it is with a doc. If the doc has gone through the screens of actually screening at a festival, it's got to be pretty good. I think there are fewer quality narrative indie features out there than there are docs. It's a weird thing with Los Angeles. I think the problem is that there are too many choices when you're living in Los Angeles. We are spoiled here in terms of every movie plays here, right?
Yeah.
So, when you're constantly invited to screenings, it does become like I'm happy to I can just watch it at home. I've got a good setup here. I've got a really good setup in my place.
It's like an improv show. You got
to
you invite all your friends and family to it. They never show up.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry you experienced that in LA.
No, it's fine. I mean, we had
but South by is great, right?
Oh, yeah.
The audience there, plus the fact that you kind of had an Austin connection in the film.
Yeah.
You did have an Austin connection in the film.
Yeah,
so how did it go over there? It went over great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We had big theaters, good applause, good laughs. Like people really got into it. Like we went to Hot Docs right after that, and that was amazing.
Sweet.
We almost there was this one theater that had it was like I think like 670 some people in one screening, and that was mind blowing because I moved in the middle of making this movie, so going from a house in New Jersey to an apartment in Burbank, I'm just set up in this little corner of this bedroom, and you're making choices, making decisions, cutting this whole thing because I had myself, and then you're watching it play in front of almost 700 people, in Toronto. It's it's different, it's Canada, but it's foreign, so it's this different country and all that sort of stuff. So it's crazy to think of all that stuff happening because when you're a kid, you watch these movies, you think there's these big these monsters behind the thing, all these people, and you think that sometimes it's just one person in a corner of a bedroom going, now, cut now, and I just think that's and that it did well. I try to pull myself out and try to look at all the moving pieces like that.
What is the? You gave some really good advice on just low budge indie doc filmmaking. What would be your advice on crowdfunding? Do you have crowdfunding advice? And I'm just saying, do you have crowdfunding advice for me? And by that,
look, you got a powerhouse behind you.
I don't have this is what people think. People think I have a powerhouse. This is why. Here, can I just tell you something?
Yes.
That is why they don't donate to the Kickstarter.
Really?
Because they think that guy doesn't need help. They think that Chris Gore doesn't need help on his thing at all.
I'm not saying the help. I'm saying, but the promotion. How many? This is a stupid question. I apologize.
Don't apologize for any question.
How many followers do you have on all your stuff?
I think that most of that is bots and bullshit. I feel that the number of people who listen is far less. Meaning a lot of people
I'm off this podcast. I'm not coming.
No, but what I mean is that but I'm not talking about the podcast. Actually, the podcast gets a good number of listeners. I'm talking about social media.
Right.
On social media, I believe that we have 100 and some odd thousand for the Film Threat. But what I'm saying is the number of people listening at any given time, the number of people who follow us but aren't active on Twitter anymore is, I'm going to guess, dramatic.
I see it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think most of our tweets are seen by about somewhere between 5 and 10,000 people. Is 15,000 or 20,000 for on a higher note.
But you know who does it well is Paul. Like he like
Osborne is aggressive.
Like he like will like if I reach this certain level, I'll post this embarrassing photo of me as a kid or something like that.
Right.
It's like kind of makes it like personal in that like. We're all in this together, sort of thing.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, so if you have any advice on the Kickstarter thing, like
I don't.
Thank you very much.
No, you know what? I mean, like with our Ghostbusters fan one, we were able to benefit off knowing that we were going to do a second one, and getting pieces of art and getting them signed by the people we were interviewing. And that was very, very helpful for when we did our second one. So so they can go buy a pop figure signed by Dan Aykroyd. And our first ever one, we had, we just did like friends and family. But the second one for I Am Santa Claus, Mick Foley was involved. He was a professional wrestler and all that stuff. So he was able to very much help us having like auctions. In some sense, we're like, have dinner with Foley, blah, blah, blah. I think, the success of your books and stuff like that, you could probably donate like 30 minutes or an hour of your time and be like, hit me up and I could help you, your festival and all that sort of stuff. Like almost like a private lesson.
I'll do that. I'm going to do that. I've got to I got to I'll come up with something.
Your own masterclass.
Something like that. Just, because, like, I've been wanting to make this doc for a while. So
what's it about?
So
or can you not?
No, I'll be public about it only because I've been public about it.
Yeah, you've already done the first one.
I already did the failed one.
Yeah.
Why not? I feel like actually, you know what? Can I tell you?
Sure.
Seriously, in all
What if I
seriousness,
said no?
The secret to doing a successful Kickstarter is to do a failed one first.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the failed Kickstarter gives you the data you need.
Yeah.
It's sort of a data ping.
Yeah.
It's how big is this audience? Who's really passionate about it? Who wants to help? What did I do wrong? So I really feel what you should do is do a crazy Kickstarter for something that you want to do with the intention to actually shut it down. And what you do then is you collect an email, you get email list of people, you get like, you basically find your audience.
Right.
Then you find out sort of what their threshold is, and you find out what rewards are popular and what aren't.
Yeah.
So the first Kickstarter is basically a sort of, it's your research and development. It's your R&D.
Yeah.
So you do that first, you fail, because the first film threat Kickstarter failed, did the second one, succeeded. The first Kickstarter for this movie I want to make, that failed, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, the second one succeeds. The doc is called Attack of the Doc.
Okay.
And it's a documentary about what happened to Attack of the Show in G4 TV.
Oh, okay.
But it's not really, that's what is on the surface what it's about.
Sure.
It's really about a more innocent time when Attack of the Show, which started in March of 2005, was this weird show before, just as I still had like a Razor phone, I was still like texting using numbers where you had like the three letters.
God.
So this was a more innocent time technologically speaking. We were learning to use these tools. Twitter started in 2007. Mm-hmm. I didn't sign on until 2009. When something happened online, some crazy thing happened on the internet, would be discussed on the show.
Okay.
So technology was evolving. We were evolving. Everyone that was on the show was kind of they weren't classically trained.
Yeah.
They weren't trained to be on TV. I was
Sure.
never trained to be on TV. I was just a guy who was a movie geek. Kevin Pereira was never trained to be on television. He was a guy who liked tech and websites, and he was an intern, and suddenly they said, be on TV.
Yeah.
So,
This was the old Screensavers show.
the old
on
screensaver
Tech
show that devolved into Attack of the Show. But so many people were influenced by Attack of the Show that now are on YouTube. And
Yeah.
I feel that this was it's basically a period piece explaining this era, how we got to where we are, and how so many were influenced by Attack of the Show. And it's the show where it's the number one question I get when I go to conventions, even film festivals, whatever, is whatever happened to Attack of the Show. So I want to make a documentary about what happened to it. Why did it go off the air? And where the people are now. I mean, so some people suggested I call it a doc of the show. But, look, I did a failed Kickstarter. I launched it during the summer. I'm told you should never launch a Kickstarter during the summer. I went for an amount of money that was too high. I knew it was too high, but it was what I really needed.
Yeah, that's one of the things we did. Like, we were like, this is how much we want, but this is how much we think we can comfortably get.
Right.
Like, you know,
I should have done that.
I've seen people who just set their goal for like $1 on the thing, so that way they're just getting everything. You know, like,
right.
You know, we've done Indiegogo and we've done Kickstarter. You know, I think there's good for each company, but sometimes it's like a Kleenex thing. You know, it's like people are just more familiar with the word Kickstarter. And
it's like a brand.
Yeah.
You know, it's a brand that people trust. Like, you just click on it and you get it. It's one click and you're done. It's, you know, I contribute to a bunch of Kickstarters, comic books, Friends movies, you know, whatever. I get hit up for them. I'll do them. I used to do the tech stuff, but I don't really trust the tech stuff now. I feel like I'm paying for your prototype. I'll buy one. I'll buy one, but I'll buy one after it's out. I don't need to get it in April of 2020.
Or you're paying for their manufacturing.
Right,
My first Kickstarter I ever did was Resurrect Dead by John Foy. Did you see that documentary?
No.
Oh, it's a good one. It played Sundance, I think 2011. It's all about these, they're called tone beat tiles, but it's around Philadelphia and New York. This guy would just glue these messages on the ground. It's a really awesome doc. You know, if anyone's listening, Resurrect Dead. But
now it's on my list. Resurrect Dead.
But you were saying that your movie, it's this, but it's really about that. I think those are the kind of best documentaries, those Trojan horse sort of movies, where you walk in, you're like, hey, look at this. This is Bill Murray, or here's Santa Claus. Oh, but it's really about being present, really about like connection.
Exactly. Like your doc is much more than just about Bill Murray and these encounters. It goes into the deeper philosophical levels. And with this documentary, my intention in it, if I can speak to you about this, it's really to examine how we got to the place where we can't even talk to each other online. It is a thing that it plagues me. I think about it all the time. Why can't we talk to each other online the way we talk to each other face to face? Why can't we do that?
There's no responsibilities. Like if some of the people talk to the people the way they did, they just get punched in the face.
Well, precisely. So, you know, that wasn't the way that it was initially. And I feel like we got to this bad place. And I want to examine how we got here and look at a time where it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Where people were really, you were excited. Like, I got a new Twitter follower. Who is this person that I don't know? And you would get to know, I would actually make friends with people online. I don't know that I feel comfortable doing that today. You know,
there's plenty of people
able to do it.
There's plenty of relationships I have with people where I haven't met them for like 5 years.
Right.
You know, but I've talked to them almost like, you know.
There's some I've never met. But this was early on. I think now I'm not sure that. So this doc is about these sort of deeper layers of how that, because I feel it's a problem. If we don't solve it, we can't solve anything. We can't if we can't solve just how to talk to people we don't agree with. It's a simple thing. But look, Attack of the Doc. People want to know. I can finally just put that documentary out, and then people will have that answer. But yes, I need to do a Kickstarter in order to just have the tools to be able to do it. You know. So
did you see Too Funny to Fail?
I have not seen Too Funny to Fail yet.
Yeah, it's all about the you know, that one season of the Dana Carvey show, and it's fantastic.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have heard of that. Yeah. I've heard. Yeah,
I've seen the first season.
Well, because you have Steve Carell, Steve Kobe, like it's all these giants behind that show. Like Louis C.K. was on it, like as a writer. Like it was this mammoth of a show. I think I'm using that word right. It was a huge show. Yeah. I mean, huge. Like these people weren't anyone. Like it was like a starting ground for all this stuff.
It's a breeding ground of new talent, basically.
Yeah. Sometimes my words aren't correct.
Now,
because that first episode made quite an impression.
Oh yeah,
on
with the
all
Bill
of
Clinton and stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know, it wouldn't be an episode of the Film Threat podcast if I didn't derail the podcast.
I asked the question.
It's just so. My apologies. I didn't want to go off on a whole tangent about my own projects, but you're changed from making this doc. I mean, there's a great part at the end where you really start to examine the philosophy of Bill Murray via his films, via his random encounters, and via your own encounter with him. You throw that out right in the very beginning. So what would you want Bill Murray to get out of this doc if he ever sees it? Now he's aware of it. He's clearly aware that this documentary exists. But what would you want Bill Murray to get out of this doc?
Yeah, I have this. I joke around about the Hollywood version of how this ends, right? Like it's like in my head, there's this vision of we're at a Q&A somewhere, maybe people are applauding at the end. Let's pretend, and at the end, I'm on stage about to do the Q&A, and I could see Bill Murray in the back. No one else could see him. He gives me the thumbs up and just turns around and disappears. That's the Hollywood version of this movie. And like, you know, I wouldn't expect anything from Bill besides maybe like good work or good job or something like, or you know what, not bad.
Right. You'll take a not bad.
Yeah, because like I don't know, like I don't think he ever does any of these things to get on a pedestal or be preachy. I just think like it's just things he just does because it entertains him, or it makes him feel like a better person, or it makes him feel, I wouldn't even say a better person, but it makes him awake and like a little bit more active in his own life, you know? And I think, you know, seeing these people, I think he might go, he's got to assume that he helps, like, gives these people these big smiles. But then to kind of go back years later, like some of these people are 7 years after the fact, and then still see them smiling about it. I like to think he'd be like, yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Well, Tommy Avallone, thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast. The film is Bill Murray Stories. It's a long Bill Murray Stories, life lessons learned from Mythical Man. I'm sure if you just look up Bill Murray Stories, you will find the film.
Yeah, it's thebillmurraystories.com. So
awesome. And then where can I know social media is a shit show, but where can we find you on social media?
If you know how to spell my last name, it's pretty. it's Tommy Avallone. That's Avallone 3. Since I'm the third.
Right. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy. Like I said, I got the books. I think I had 1 and maybe 3. I don't know if I skipped 2 on purpose or what.
That's okay. But, 2 was shit.
But I enjoyed it, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you.
There's always that one person who you want to meet, and you're like, this is never going to happen. And then this guy shows up at your door.
I'm bartending outside on the patio, and I get a text message.
We're just about to sit down for dinner. Knock at the door.
I'm a wedding photographer, and I get ready to photograph. And as I look through the lens, I see this guy. We were having a house party.
And I run inside, close the door. I was like, shh.
You're not going to believe it. Bill Murray's here.
Oh my God.
Hello, my name is Tommy Avallone. I'm a documentary film director, and I wanted to do a story with you. I'm not good at this. There are legions of tall tales about Bill that have circulated online throughout the years.
So I look, and it's Bill Murray slapping his belly.
These Bill Murray stories are random interactions with Bill and regular everyday people.
Bill Murray could just sort of like arrive in your life for a few minutes.
Why would such a big celebrity insert himself into these random situations?
I don't think people can figure out why he would do that. It's like, where's Waldo?
This was a search for answers.
Bill was just fine getting lost.
You okay?
I'm Bill, by the way. He just reveled in not knowing where he was.
I run inside, and Bill is bartending.
He's like a candle when you light it in a room, and all of a sudden the room smells great.
He goes after little moments charged with meaning. He marches to his own beat.
Bill is teaching us all how to live.